How we doing? How we doing? This is Destination Denver, Colorado, and today I'm here to give you the truth about the Denver real estate market. Where do we stand right now, and will prices drop in 2023? We're here to cover it all, starting right now. All right, this is Destination Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jimmy Everts, and listen, if you're interested in learning all the ins and outs, pros and cons to moving to or around Denver, Colorado, then this is a channel for you. So make sure to click that subscribe button as I'm dropping new videos for you each and every week. And listen, as much as I like trying to be a little creative here on camera for you, I'm also a licensed mortgage broker covering the entire state of Colorado and teamed with some of Denver's most talented realtors. So the number and email popping up on your screen, know that I am always the person answering your phone calls, answering your texts, answering your emails, there when and if you need me. Now that we have that fun-filled stuff out of the way, let's get to what we're here for, and that is, what's the truth behind this Denver real estate market as we close out 2022? All right, so let's start this discussion with a little microeconomic explanation. So unless you have avoided buying gas, going to a grocery store, eating out at a restaurant, or heck, even ordering something on Amazon, you are aware of the fact that prices are increasing, and they're increasing rapidly. That's right, inflation is out of control. So to combat inflation, we've seen the Federal Reserve this year raise their short-term interest rates repeatedly from 0% to, as of the making of this video, 3.5%, and we expect to see further increases. What that has meant is the interest rate on credit cards, the interest rate on equity lines of credit, the ability for one bank to loan another bank money on a short period of time basis has increased. And it has also eventually had an impact on mortgage interest rates. So if we were having a discussion back in December, January, February of this year of 2022, we would be talking about interest rates on mortgages that were sitting in the low 3% threshold. And then sometime around mid-spring, going into the summer, we saw interest rates start to shoot up rapidly to here we are now talking about interest rates that are currently above 7%. Now, why would inflation impact mortgage rates the way they have? Well, simply put, if I loan you money today and I know that you are not going to repay the totality of that money for 30 years, which is the typical mortgage term, 30 years, then the fact that the money I'm loaning you today isn't going to be worth nearly as much in the future, meaning I'm going to loan you 300 grand today, but that 300 grand could be worth 500-600 grand 30 years from now, man, that's gonna kill me. So in order to combat that inflation, I need to raise the interest rate on the money I lend you so that as you pay me back, I'm making up for the fact that that money isn't going to be worth as much in the future. Man, I was on a roll and had to have a little tongue twister there at the end. Now, we've seen a history of the Federal Reserve doing this. This is a normal occurrence for them. Increase interest rates, that means people typically slow down their spending. It allows suppliers to resupply, which then balances us out, supply and demand. We do that whole spiel. The issue is we have had market growth in the economy for 14 years. We have seen things explode. People have put a lot of money in their pocket. They've bought homes at low interest rates. They've bought things on low interest on their credit cards. And we've created spending habits that also did not exist 15 years ago. I don't know about you, but 15 years ago, I certainly was not having packages randomly delivered to my door on a nearly daily basis, not thinking anything of it, just clicking a button. So as the Federal Reserve goes about their activities, as they take action, it still has a lingering effect. We still don't know what will happen as far as how high they will need to raise these interest rates before it takes effect. So there's still some fluctuation, both with our economy, in the mortgage market, in the real estate market, and obviously you're seeing it in your world as well. This is also where talk of a recession will come in, and there is certainly the argument to be made that we are touching a recession already, or that we certainly have one in the near future. But of course, you're not here for an economics lesson, nor am I an economics professor, so let's jump into what this is doing to the real estate market. So, as of the making of this video, the Denver real estate market in particular is down about 27.5% in sales from last year. Now, obviously, interest rates have had a major impact on this. As the cost to borrow money increases, so too does the difficulty for borrowers to be able to qualify to borrow that money. And while we've seen that decrease in sales for the year, appreciation is still up. Denver still sits at an 8.4% appreciation for the year. And the average home price in Denver, as of the making of this video, sat at $671,000. So Denver overall still has a pretty healthy market. But what are the drawbacks? Well, at the beginning of this year, Denver barely had any homes on the market. We had fewer than 2,000 at one point. That was basically 2 weeks worth of properties that could be sold before we were out of homes. Now we sit at nearly 2 months worth of inventory. That's a term that the real estate industry likes to use. The idea being that if not another home sells, not another home gets listed on the market, we have 2 months worth of inventory. As of the making of this video, we have approximately 1.7 months of inventory. Again, meaning that if not another home listed today, we'd have a little more than 1.5 months worth of inventory before everything was sold. So with raising interest rates, you're seeing more homes come on the market, or stay on the market, I should say. Not come to the market, but stay on the market. You're seeing the days on market increase. Last year, the average days on market before something was put under contract was 14 days. Right now, it's double that to about 28 days. We're also seeing nearly half, right around 50% of all homes that are put on sale see a sales price decrease before they go under contract. Now, before we get excited and think that home prices are just going to start plummeting, let's also understand that part of the reason for that is the fact that sellers and honestly their respective realtors are learning as we go where homes need to be priced. The fact is, for the last 2 to 3 years, you could throw just about any price on a home and it was going to sell. Now we're in a market where these sales prices have to be far more competitive, and you're seeing realtors and of course sellers having to adjust to that. But I mean, if I'm a buyer and I see that 50% of homes are having a sales price decrease, I mean, that's not exactly bad news. Now, before we go too far down rabbit holes, let's do this quick comparison of where we are today to where we were in 2008. And let's start first and foremost. People have far more equity in their homes today than they did in 2008. In 2008, we had a lot of, I'll admit it, I wasn't in the business at the time, but we had a lot of predatory lending. We had loans that had negative amortization, which meant that even though you made a payment, you actually owed more money on the house month over month over month. You had interest-only loans, which still exist today, but are far and fewer between. You had adjustable rate mortgages with very short periods of time between the periods that they could adjust. Whereas now today, you can't find an adjustable rate loan for fewer than 5 to 7 to 10 years on average. There are stricter regulations as far as the credit scores that are required and the down payments required to buy a home. Just in credit score alone, the lowest 10% of all credit score holders, the lowest 10% of all credit score holders who bought a home this summer sat at 659 for the average credit score. 659. That's actually 50 points higher than pre-bubble. We're talking 2006, 2007. For the same bottom 10% of credit scores, the score itself is 50% higher on average. That might have been the most informative thing you've heard in this video, or it might have been the most long-winded thing of this video. Hopefully you didn't stop the video based on that. Just give me a bad comment about it, talk some smack, keep watching. And the biggest thing to keep in mind, in 2008, there was a massive surplus of homes on the market. There were a ton of people who had to sell. They were either in foreclosure or going into a short sale where you're basically selling your house for as much as you possibly can to get the bank back as much as you can, so they'll let you off the hook. We don't have that right now. We don't have a surplus of sales. As slow as the market has been, keep in mind, the days on market sit at 28. The average inventory sits at 1.7 months. We're not talking about during the crash, when that was well over 6 months of inventory, 8 months of inventory, got to a point where we were talking 10 months plus in inventory. Not even close to that type of supply issue. Demand is still overwhelming supply in the grand scheme of things. So what happens as these interest rates potentially continue to rise? Well, we're talking about it already. If rates continue to rise, prices have no choice but to, for the most part, level off and at some point decrease. That means people have to be far more realistic about what they can sell their home for. If interest rates sit at 7%, that price point sits at A. If interest rates increase to 8%, that means that sales price has to adjust to B. And if rates continue to increase, that decrease has to occur. It's no different on the opposite end. If we see interest rates start to come down, you can rest assured that home prices will begin to go up. So in the Denver market, we're seeing homes sit on the market longer. We're seeing buyers have the ability to negotiate pieces of that sale, not just on sales price, but they're able to negotiate things on inspection, roofs, furnaces, water heaters, sewage issues. Now again, every property having its own specific scenario and situation, but we had not seen that in years. For multiple years, a seller put a home on the market and it was, here you go buyer, if you want this house, this is the scenario you're gonna buy it in, and that's it. Buyers are having now more flexibility to have a conversation with sellers about their home, to negotiate sales price, to negotiate repairs, to negotiate concessions, which is a huge piece of the puzzle as well. So seller concessions are the idea that I offer you a certain price for your home, but I want some of that money back in order to A, pay for my closing costs, or B, potentially buy my interest rate down either on a permanent or temporary basis. So again, with the sellers having to give in at some extent to some of these buyers, these concessions are coming more and more into play. We hadn't seen that in years. Buyers were lucky to get 1,000 or 2,000 in concessions, let alone thousands. So now we're seeing more of that. So while interest rates are high, buyers are having the ability to use those concessions to buy their interest rate down, thereby maximizing their buying power. And there's a couple, shouldn't say just a couple, but there are a few different options that we explore in that. We have temporary buy downs that last for a year or two, and we have permanent buy downs in which that is your interest rate going forward. Obviously, pros and cons to that, I'm not going to cover in this video because I'm not trying to put you to sleep any more than talking economics and housing markets do, but we are seeing sellers have to do things that provide buyers the ability to genuinely buy their home. And so we know that buyers are using the strategy of adjusting sales prices and negotiating for seller concessions, and we're seeing sellers take action by, for the most part, adjusting the prices of their home, being more realistic to the market we're in, and also offering those concessions ahead of time, saying, here is our sales price, and we'll give you this much in concessions if you buy this house. I think what we've run into, though, a bit is that buyers want to act like it's 2008 and they can get whatever they want and they can lowball people to death. And sellers are still thinking it's like 2014, 2015, where the market's still on the rise, it's just not explosive. Where people have to understand it's 2022. Buyers have to give in a little bit to sellers, and sellers have to give in a little bit to buyers if we're gonna make it work. Got the hands just coming together, it just makes you warm and fuzzy, doesn't it? So going into 2023, what happens if interest rates go up? Well, again, if interest rates go up, you're going to see home prices continue to stay level and you're going to see some of them decrease. Now, Denver is still a very popular place to live. There's still a lot of demand for people moving here. There is also always going to be a demand for housing. People have to, at times, move. They don't have a choice, and renting is not going to be the best option for everyone. So homes are still going to sell. But you can expect that if interest rates rise, and especially if they rise by 0.5 point, 1%, if we're talking about 7.5%, 8.5% interest rates, home prices have to adjust for that. Now, if you are hanging tight thinking that you're gonna wait for prices to come down, I'm just gonna level with you. The reason those prices came down is probably because, again, interest rates went up. So even though the price went down, understand your mortgage payment may not change at all. In fact, if the rates go too high and the price decrease doesn't level that off, you might be actually looking at a higher mortgage payment. Now, let's say the flip side. Let's say that interest rates start to come down. Well, if that is the case, again, depending on how drastic that change is, you can anticipate that if interest rates come down, more buyers are going to enter the market. More people are going to come back. That demand is going to increase. Will we see an equal amount of sellers enter the market? Well, we haven't seen supply keep up with demand in years and years and years. We're talking decades at this point. So if interest rates come down, you can expect it to turn into somewhat of a bloodbath again, in which buyers outnumber sellers. At some point this year, we were talking buyers outnumbering sellers 10 to 1, 15 to 1, 20 to 1. I'm not saying it's getting that bad again, but in specific areas, sure could. More than anything else, I think there's always this idea, whether it's homes, stocks, cryptocurrency, the idea that you're going to time the market. And the fact is, a very, very, very few people time the market. And most people, if they say they time the market, it's a lucky guess. For the most part, we have no idea how high interest rates truly will go. There's a lot of guesses, and some of them educated. We have no idea when they will start to decrease. We have people in our industry who are saying by the end of this year, within the next 2 months, we will see rates decrease. Me personally, I don't see inflation under control. I don't see any way that rates, whether they are short-term or long-term like mortgage rates, I don't see how they can start coming down in the next 2 months. And even if they did, humble opinion, I think that reaction would be too fast. I think if the Fed started to lower their short-term rates, I think if mortgage rates started to decrease, we would see the market overreact. I think you would see demand skyrocket on certain things, especially on those short-term rates. I think supply would become an issue again. I think inflation would take off, especially if those rates are dropped too low in the short term. So I think there's going to be a conservative viewpoint to this. I think interest rates for mortgages are going to hover around that high 6 to low 7% range, maybe a little higher than that for a while. I think these short-term rates, what you're paying on your credit cards, is going to maintain for a while. They're not going to make a drastic change to anything until they see that we have sustained our course in a positive direction. So most forecasts dictate that homes will appreciate about 4% next year. Humbly speaking, I think that is a conservative and probably pretty accurate describer of what should occur next year. If interest rates come down and they come down hard, you'll see higher appreciation. If they stay where we are, 3 to 4% is healthy. But who knows? That's why we're going to keep discussing it every month. When I say who knows, no one knows for sure. Nobody has that crystal ball. But we'll just keep looking at data and predicting as best as we can. In the meantime, the number and email popping up on your screen. Always happy to discuss these things in depth. We talk about different parts of the market that might be hotter than others. This is Destination Denver, Colorado. I am your host, Jimmy Everts. That was the truth about the Denver real estate market, where we stand now, and will we see home prices decrease in 2023? Until I see you next time, peace.